See. Welcome, everybody, to the special audit committee, Thursday, July 11th at 1 p.m. in 2024. Thank you for all attending this special meeting and avoiding having to meet over a holiday weekend. So I appreciate that. I'd like to start by asking our interpreter to explain how to access interpretation. Please go ahead.
Announcement from the interpreter. To use the interpretation feature, please scroll to the bottom of the Zoom screen where the meeting controls are and click on the interpretation icon, the world, and select English as your language. If you are joining through the Zoom mobile app, cell phone, tablet, etc., please press the ellipsis, then the interpretation, and then choose your language. Finally, click on Mute Original Audio to not hear the original Spanish low in the background. Headsets are available for interpretation. If you are in the meeting room, please check out a headset from the receptionist in the lobby. Aviso por parte del intérprete: para hacer uso del servicio de interpretación, por favor de desplazarse a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom, donde aparecen los controles. Haga clic en el icono de interpretación, que es el globo terráqueo, y seleccione Spanish, o sea, español. Si está usted utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom en su celular, tableta, etc., presione los puntos suspensivos, luego interpretación y luego el idioma. Si no desea escuchar el audio original en inglés en el fondo, por favor seleccione Mute Original Audio, o sea, silenciar audio original. Contamos también con auriculares que están disponibles para el servicio de interpretación. Si se encuentra usted en la sala de reunión, por favor de pedir los auriculares con la recepcionista en el vestíbulo.
Okay, thank you. With that, would you please join me in the pledge? Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God. Thanks. And Francesca, can you confirm we have a quorum?
Thank you, Chair. We do have a quorum.
Yeah, let the record reflect that all members are present except for member Wong Nickerson and alternate Musgrove. With that, we'll go ahead and be moving into the agenda. Just for the public's information, my intention is to allow 1 minute of public comment on numbers 2 and number 3, and then 2 minutes of public comment on all other items on the agenda. With that, can we go ahead and start on non-agenda public member comments? Do we have any public members wishing to speak?
Thank you, Chair. First up will be Catherine Rhodes, and then we'll go to Paul Hankin on Zoom.
Hello, this is Catherine Rhodes, and many of you know, I'm a civil engineer here. And the reason why you actually have an audit board is because I went to the Department of Justice Office of Inspector General and told them I have all these seismic concerns and nobody's taking them seriously. And so they told me that they're going to actually have an audit function where people who are whistleblowers like me could actually bring things to you guys so you could take them seriously instead of blowing them off like you have been for 20 years. And so what happened after that? So what happened after that is that I forced you to do fault investigations on the Mid-Coast corridor. And the result is that there was an 11.5% increase in the cost because now you had to do some type of slope stability for 2 of the 3 active faults that you found. That was a multi-million-dollar risk that you guys just blew off. I told you about it early on. You could have designed for it, but instead of designing for it, you just ignored it, pretended it didn't exist, and the federal government actually made you do something
Sorry,
about it.
actually, I think, sorry, Catherine, 1 second. I had meant to give 2 minutes for non-agenda and 1 minute for 2 and 3. So can she get another minute, please, if she wants? And then the second speaker should get 2 minutes.
Lovely. Thank you so much. And so anyway, I've been dealing with this, the seismic issue for, probably about 30 years. It started when there was an actual project, Broadway 655, I believe it was, where there wasn't, there was a utility corridor going through it. So the city asked me to do to do an investigation on all the faults in the area. So I went down to the city. I looked through all the records. I looked through a lot of engineering firms' records in San Diego, and I found there was something very, very wrong with how we're doing fault investigations in San Diego. One of the big ones, what I found out is that nobody in San Diego County ever turns in a fault investigation to the state, so we could have it updated in our open file reports at the California Geological Survey. And so San Diego is still corrupt in this issue, and hopefully it can be taken care of. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Paul Hankin, and after Paul will be the person with the Samsung SM-A0370. Paul, you are self-muted at the moment. You can begin when you're ready. Paul's put his hand down, so I'll go ahead and move on to Samsung and then the person with the phone number ending in 731.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, so I think Paul, I don't know what happened to his connection, but he was still on there. He was still wanting to speak. But this is Consuelo, and I just wanted to chime in to pay attention what's going on, to what's happening. And it's, yeah, it's unfortunate, Catherine, that, gosh, so many years. I don't know what it's going to take for the people of our county and, quite frankly, the rest of humanity to catch on to this system. These small corporations are not working. And, well, they are working. They're working for not the people, though. It's really unfortunate. And, you know, it's, I don't know what it's going to take, but I do know it's not going to take, I do know that the other option of throwing in the towel and not giving a crap of what happens at these meetings or, you know, these audit committee things and these other things within the county, you know, it's just, I don't know, man. It's just, it's pretty crazy times where we have other things as a priority instead of like real major things, you know. So hopefully, not hopefully, it is going to happen. It's going to happen because too many people are, in fact, you know, they're barely surviving. They're barely getting by. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say, but I look forward to hearing what this meeting, with the information from this meeting, and yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be the person with the phone number ending in 731. You can go ahead.
Hey there, it's a tough act to follow truth. Zito, smart people know not to follow me, but maybe that's why you gave me some replies last time. But who was that laughed when I said I have an interesting look? I bet it was Francesca. Also, the meeting video never showed Emily, so I still have no idea what she looks like. I think she should be required to stand in the middle of the floor in the spotlight for the sake of the public record. Now to the serious stuff. Jennifer from Davis Farr had a recommendation to increase the length of passwords for programs related to the 125 toll fiasco. I don't believe that long passwords that are hard to remember are going to solve a people problem, because at best, toll idiots thought they could fix a system that was broken for years since day one. At worst, toll idiots knowingly lied and maybe even colluded with others to financially benefit from the lies about the numbers. But one of SANDAG's financial experts said it's going to take additional hoops to jump through. Is that the best SANDAG can offer when using the people's tax money? Why is it always hoops? Why is SANDAG like a circus? Jennifer also said that in her experience, there's never been this magnitude of error before at SANDAG. The SANDAG excuse for corruption? Turnover rates and we'll do better next year with new beginnings. That's pathetic. And I asked, how could anyone know for sure what the magnitude of error was before if previously Hassan blocked previous audits and before that Gary made sure documents were deleted from the public record? Like I said, we need an MOP on aisle MPL. We need fixed after 20 years. But anyways, sorry, I'm phoning it in for a great start time of 1 p.m., but I just did 2 city councils the last 2 days, and I got a lot to prepare for tomorrow, as everybody knows. But next time we see each other, let's all toast SANDAG sandwiches. Doesn't that sound fun? Even though I do have a recommendation for new food. Thank you.
That concludes the public comments on this item.
Thank you. Do we have any members that wish to make a non-agenda comment? Seeing none, we will then move on to item 2, which is the update from the Office of the Independent Performance Auditor. Courtney.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Courtney Ruby. I'm the Independent Performance Auditor. And the activity since our last meeting is we have been working diligently on the 3 reports that you find in your package today: the risk assessment, the contracts and invoice payments audit, as well as the annual investigations report, which we'll be covering. We've also been working on the Who Knew When What investigation. We anticipate wrapping that up in August. And we are happily recruiting for both an audit manager and an audit senior, and with the great assistance of HR, have that announcement out there. And I believe it's going to close in about 2 weeks. So we're looking forward to having some great candidates there. In addition, we're working on finalizing the request for proposal for independent legal counsel, as well as the independent financial assessment. I also want to let you know that we just joined the Association of Local Government Auditors. And if you're not familiar with that organization, in my opinion, it is one of the best organizations for local government auditors. It includes 300 organizational members and more than 2,500 individual members. It includes both elected and appointed auditors from cities, counties, utility districts, transit agencies, tribal government, and more. And it's from around the world. This is where we can bring some of our best collaborative thinking with our peers to really look across the world and see what other shops are doing. It is also an incredible platform for training, for leadership, so that we are encouraging our team to join committees and participate in that. In addition, they have a peer review program. And as a shop that we're required to follow generally accepted government auditing practices standards, we need to go through a peer review every 3 years. So we'll participate through ALGA's program, which means a team of independent auditors will come in here and assess our own practices to ensure that we're doing everything we're supposed to as far as quality control. And that's why you can rely on our work. And we will also participate in training our auditors to go out and perform independent peer reviews as well. So I'm really excited that we're kicking off this year with ALGA's membership. And if you have any questions about that, or you want to talk about it more, I'm happy to do that afterward.
Thank you. Interesting stuff. Do we have any public speakers on this item, Francesca?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we do. Paul Hankin, you can go ahead when you're ready, and Paul will be followed by Drew.
Sorry, this one will be 1 minute, as well as item 3 will be 1 minute.
Okay. I have to do is find my notes. Okay, let's see. Item number 2, 3.
We're on 2.
Oh, I didn't have any comment on this. Sorry, David.
No worries. Next speaker, please.
All right, Truth, you can go ahead when you're ready.
All right, very fulfilling. Paul's a great researcher, though. Come on, give him credit. All right. The who, I just really want to know the who, when, what investigation. Is that the official name of the investigation, and who decided that? I'm kind of curious. I think I approve of that name, though. It's pretty good. Although hard to say, and Courtney's got it down pretty pat. So as long as it's filled with more facts than the Warren Commission, the Rockefeller Commission, and the Church Committee, I think we'll be all right. So good luck with that one. That concludes my comments. Thank you.
That concludes the commenters.
Great, thank you. Does any board member wish to make, or committee member wish to make a comment? No, sounds good. Maybe we should call it the Dr. Seuss investigation. Sorry. Anyway, with that, we'll move on to item number 3, which is the consent calendar. And the only thing on the consent calendar is the approval of the meeting minutes. Do we have any public speaker on the meeting minutes? And this one will be 1 minute again.
Yes, we do. Thank you. Truth, you can go ahead.
Hey again, I'm almost offended by 1 minute. Not really. The minutes do not show that I commented on the item 2 OIPA activities. So for the record, I actually did comment on Courtney's update at the June 7th meeting. It lasted a whopping 20 seconds, and that's where I mentioned the mysterious Emily. Also, the original draw did not comment on that update as the minutes currently read. I also did not comment on the minutes for May 3rd. Actually, it was Zito who commented on the minutes. He did a great job finding a technical mistake about special meeting versus not special meeting. And hopefully nobody is confused on the less than minute taken to address mistaken minutes about meeting minutes from this meeting's minutes. Thank you. That concludes my comments.
That concludes the public comments.
Okay, great. Any committee member comments? Otherwise, entertain a motion to approve potentially. And
So moved.
thank you. And we have a move by Drucker. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Pigney Forrest. Can we please vote? That motion passes unanimously with member Wong Nickerson absent. With that, we will now move into the reports, the meat of the meeting, just for the IT groups. This is where everybody will have now 2 minutes to speak again on each one of these items. We'll start with item number 4, which is the Office of the Independent Performance Auditor Audit Plan, which we had a preview last month or thereabouts. And now we have all of the details. And go ahead, Courtney.
Thank you, Chair. I am honored to be able to present my first annual work plan to the committee. So in accordance with Assembly Bill 805 and Board Policy 39, Audit Policy and Advisory Committee and Audit Activities, Section 3.1, the IPA will prepare a final audit plan for discussion and approval. And this is what you have before you today. As the chair stated, we did present it. I did present it at the last meeting. The purpose of, so the process is that I conduct an annual risk assessment process, myself and my team, and that is included in the report. So I'm going to walk through the report. I'm not going to cover every page unless the members would like every page covered, since we had discussed it before. The report goes through the steps involved in a risk assessment process and concludes with our proposed plan. The key is really to look at risk to develop an effective and impactful audit plan. I want to thank the Board of Directors and the Audit Committee members who participated, and SANDAG's executive team and department directors for entrusting me with your concerns and sharing your ideas during this year's annual risk assessment process. The effectiveness of this process is dependent upon open and honest communication with key stakeholders, in addition to OIPA's analysis of the risks surrounding SANDAG. As you move through the report, it talks about what the office does. It also talks about what we produce. And what we do produce is we produce annual reports, investigations, corrective action plan follow-ups, and special requests. A special request is based upon available resources and we may conduct a special analysis and reviews either at my own initiation or the request of the Board of Directors or Audit Committee or management. Our strategic goals are listed in the report, and we went over those last time. I'm happy to take any questions on those. Then we get into the risk assessment process that talks about how we prioritize performance audits on page 7 of the report, and then conclude on page 9, drum roll please, with the fiscal year 2025 audit plan. So this includes projects already in process and those that will begin in fiscal year 25, based on the framework that is described in the preceding pages. The audits that we currently have in process and are anticipated to be completed this year is a board requested audit. In addition, this falls into our contracting line of work. We are in the process of a performance audit of HNTB to evaluate if there was sufficient oversight over the contractor and provided by the contractor, and if SANDAG complies with established contracting requirements and models best practices. As part of this audit, we have identified 5 projects, and that does include the toll roads, and that was a significant amount of the board's discussion was around the tolling operations. Additionally, we require 3 annual reports to be completed, and this is consistent with the goals and metrics in the report. So we require an annual recommendation follow-up report, which has typically been called the CAP, Corrective Action Plan. And my team and I will be conducting our recommendation follow-up process this summer. We'll be looking at approximately 60 open recommendations, and then we'll be before you in September with that report to let you know the status of management's open recommendations. So the risk assessment process led to the reports that are listed above on the overhead. And first out of the gate is the individual assessment of the finance department. This was a recommendation that came from OIPA to the board at the investigation, the SR 125 investigation. This will be a contracted assessment, but it will be my oversight will be managing the contract. Next is another audit that was requested by the board. This is a sole source procurement process audit, performance audit, and that again falls in the contracting line. This will include the evaluation of A to B and Deloitte, in addition to other sole sources. So we'll really be looking at the process around how SANDAG awards sole sources. I'm going to pause for a second and just talk about, so these topics are listed, but the objectives is part of the audit planning process. So these are high level topics. What we do is we then go into a planning process where we determine our scope and objectives. What are audit objectives? Audit objectives really are honing in on the questions that we want the audit to answer. When we identify those key questions that ask the most critical question regarding to effectiveness, efficiency, equity, it could be anything that we have determined based on our preliminary planning that there's a highest risk area or would be the most impactful. We then formulate those questions. Those are the audit objectives. And then the scope is the time period that we are looking at, as well as it could be the certain projects that we're evaluating. The next on the list is the ethical climate survey. So as we went through the risk assessment process, culture was discussed. It was high on the list of how much culture was discussed. And in addition, it's not just the interview process that feeds into these reports being selected. It's the interviews, document reviews, what's coming in on the hotline report, also what's considered in relation to internal and external risks. So what we know is that the board has consistently been talking about culture. So it is looking at where is the agency's culture. The ethical climate survey will establish a baseline. And so we know where the organization stands today. This is something that has been used by my peers and was consistently used by myself in the city of Oakland. The survey is created by the Institute of Local Government, and it measures the degree to which ethical standards influence organizational and individual decision-making and helps identify ethical blind spots. The first section of the survey gauges opinions about the ethics of individual employees. The second and third sections respectively gauge opinions about the ethics of management and elected officials. So it gains great insight into where we're starting. And then in approximately 2 years, we take it again to see where the organization has grown. That's a report. That won't be an audit. That will be a survey report. Next is the administration of the bike program, the early action plan. So what we know about the bike program and just preliminary, some things, I should say, not everything we know, but some things that we know about the bike program in our preliminary analysis is that in 2013, the Board of Directors approved a $200 million initial investment over 10 years to implement the Regional Bike Plan Every Action Program. The EAP is a network of high-quality bikeways comprised of 77 linear miles of new facilities designed to increase transportation options. It was presented on June 12th, 2024 at the ITAC meeting. That's the Transnet Independent Taxpayer Oversight Committee, that the anticipated completion date is fiscal year 2029. So the program started in 2013. It was designed to be a 10-year program. Right now, anticipated completion is 2029. And currently, as of fiscal 2023, they are anticipating the program funding at $400 million, so twice the original amount. So we'll look into that. So when we say that is on the list, we will determine objectives and scope around that to evaluate the administration. And in that process, we'll be looking at the highest risk areas to evaluate. Talent management and workforce planning and succession management. SANDAG, not unlike most governments, is experiencing a silver tsunami. And there are other things that could be impacting it. This is really designed to look at what are the practices in relation to talent management, workforce planning, and succession management. What we know is that workforce planning and succession management support addresses both current and future human resource needs in an organization. And in order to have effective workforce and succession planning processes, enable an organization to be responsive to the dynamic work environments and government priorities. So we'll be going in and evaluating where SANDAG stands in that process. We will also be initiating a departmental risk assessment in the spring with the department heads of SANDAG as well as executive management. And what that looks like is that we will come in and we will provide some initial briefings and overview to talk to the directors about internal controls, to identify and analyze the risks that a specific department within an organization faces. We'll then help identify the department heads to help identify potential risk and vulnerabilities, and then what measures need to be implemented to help control those. And we'll issue that out as a report. That will not be a performance audit, but instead a report. It will also inform next year's risk assessment process as well. The next performance and audit and last performance audit for this year's work plan is project management, internal projects, and capital projects. So when we talk about internal projects, that is projects that the agency is managing internally. It can be the ERP system that is being implemented right now. It could be the move, but it is really looking at how the agency typically designs its project management to achieve its goals, look for opportunities for improvement, and accountability for results is what we'll be looking at. And then we'll select several capital projects additionally. So we're looking internal project management and external project management. Lastly, as part of our work, we'll be issuing approximately 4 investigations. And as everyone knows, that could be higher or lower. We anticipate 4 is probably a good average at this point with what we know. So those are the fiscal year 2025 proposed audits that I'm asking the committee to approve today and move to the board tomorrow. I do want to bring everybody's attention to the last page of the report. which is page 16 in the annual audit plan and page 24 in your packet. And this is potential audit topics considered. It gives you a good idea of the breadth of audit topics that were discussed during the process. So I would invite you, if you have not had an opportunity to look at that, I think that's good for both management, the audit committee, and interested stakeholders to be able to look at that. Going back to the annual audit plan, we then have several appendixes which talk about what OIPA does, our budget, what we've accomplished, and I'm happy to take any questions in relation to any items that are included in the report. And I welcome your discussion today. Thank you.
Great. Very nice overview. Thank you. I think we'll start with public comments. Francesca, can you call any public commenters?
Thank you, Chair. First speaker will be Catherine Rhodes. If you'd like to step up to the podium, followed by Consuelo.
Hi, I would like to share my screen. I don't know how to do that.
I will go ahead and I see you in the list. I'll promote you to a panelist and then you should have
Okay.
the permissions to do that.
Okay, and if I could get it back to 2 minutes, please. Okay, so here I am joining as a panelist. And if I could see my,
I don't think
my
that it's
presentation. I
sharing
don't see it
just
up
yet.
above.
Can you try to share it again, Catherine? Sorry, it didn't go through
Okay.
the first time.
Okay, I don't see what to do. Thank you. Yes, please, if you share that. I don't know.
Definitely not sharing.
I don't know how to do it.
What are you trying to share?
I'm trying to share this.
Is it PowerPoint?
Yes. Hi, I'm Catherine Rhodes, and what this picture is here is of your proposed SANDAG headquarters and bus stop over a multi-use facility bounded by the full downtown block of A, B, Union, and State Street. And the building across the way right there, you can see how it clips in a little bit. That's because there's a 25-foot active fault buffer setback right there that goes directly from there onto your property that you guys are not admitting exists. And the reason why you're not admitted and exist is because you don't follow state regular Alquist Priolo laws as it relates to fault investigations. And then also your lack of third-party review on your fault investigations, and then your lack of turning in your fault investigations to the state geologist 30 days after you approve them. So it could be put into open filed reports. So people like me who kind of look at these things could actually have information there. But instead of following it, you guys aren't. You're just totally ignoring it. I feel that I'm going to maybe be coming here and screaming at you, literally screaming at you for your corruption, your ongoing corruption of I don't know why you're wasting my time and making me come here for 20 years and then just blowing it off and saying, no big deal. Somebody must have actually looked at it. No, nobody actually looked at it. It's so sad. The next building, here's just another picture. I just took these this morning on my way here. And then here is the Alquist Priolo earthquake fault zone. At one point, and here it is, A Street, B Street, U is for Union, S is for State. This is where the active fault is in the new 2021 Alquist Priolo map. Back in 2016, you guys said a fault didn't exist here. I actually had to go to the state geologist and force them to put this back in because their preliminary report said that this fault didn't exist. And I made them put it back in so that you guys would have a clue. And so anyway, I'm just so disappointed in this audit
Thank
committee.
you. Your time has expired. Our next speaker will be Consuelo, who will be followed by Paul Henkin. You can go ahead.
Yeah, so yeah, again, it's unfortunate, rules for thee and not for me. And until we have more people paying attention, that's when it's going to change. But wow, so let's get to it. You have establishing only a baseline. Let's see, the ethical climate survey. So that's only for establishing a baseline of where to start. You did say Oakland, right? Same Oakland that has wood on their police headquarters windows. Got it. So only to get insight of where to start. That's really exactly why and how government works. This is why they work at the pace they do, accomplishing absolutely nothing for the benefit of the taxpayers. And regarding the ridiculous bike lanes, huge red flags, again, for the ones who are paying attention, that eventually this local government will have the people, the hard-working tax-paying citizens, tax cattle, be on public transit or on a stupid dorky bike. And let's see. Yeah, it's just really, it's so sad. And you know, I thank all the people who are paying attention and who chime in to really get what's going on. It's hard to follow, and it's purposely like that. It's purposely confusing. It's purposely, you know, you use words like transparency and all that stuff when it's it is so out there, man. You gotta have like a freaking it's really sad. It's really, really sad. But anyways, yeah, the people are waking up and they're catching on, and they're quite fed up, quite frankly, and it's just a matter of time. So I hope that you all jump on board and start, you know, just know that all these policies and all these things are eventually.
Thank you. Your time expired. Our next speaker will be Paul Henkin. You can go ahead when you're ready. Paul, you're self-muted at the moment. Paul, it seems like you might be having some technical difficulties. So if you'd like to provide written comments to me, I know you've done that in the past. I'll make sure that they're provided to the committee. And Chair, that was the last public speaker.
Great. Thank you, Francesca. And we'll now move on to any questions or comments that the committee has. I'll start out by noting that Courtney did sort of go over this, but we had asked for 3 things to be included as part of the audit plan based upon the 125 investigation. I mean, Courtney referred to them as to board requests, but actually I would say it was more board discussion. It may have come up as requests in your one-on-ones with board members, but this committee then took the board discussion and formulated into 3 things, one of which was 2 of are called out explicitly. One of is the HNTB audit, and we voted on that. And the other one was the sole source audit, which as you can see in the plan, and we voted on that. And the last one was the one that is still known as the who, knew, what, when, where audit or investigation. And that is one of the 4 investigations that is outlined in that last bullet. So that's covered in this report, even though it's not explicitly called out. I just wanted to make sure that was clear before I went to any further questions or conversation. But anybody have any questions or comments? Shanae.
Good afternoon, everyone. I don't have any edits or additions to the actual audit plan. I would just like to get a little bit of perspective in regards to one of the topics on the potential audit topics considered page, and that's in relation to the IT and cybersecurity. So I just kind of want to get a sense from you, Courtney, and the team as to kind of when or if you anticipate kind of touching on some of the IT and cyber issues, and if you do, what resources do you need? And I ask for obvious reasons. I mean, I think within reporting lately in IT cyber circles, water infrastructure is at a point being targeted. So it's kind of only a matter of time before transportation is kind of one of those areas that's tapped for widespread disruption. So just kind of wanted to get a sense of where you and your team were in terms of trying to address the IT and cyber issues.
Thank you so much, Member Pickney Forrest. It is such a critical question, and it is always at the top of my list whenever I'm doing analyzing risks. So I have reviewed the organization's IT risk assessment reports. So I know that there's been a cadence of reports, and what I will be requesting is for the agency to respond to me in the current status of the outstanding recommendations. So if the agency did not have that present, what I would have been recommending was an IT security assessment. But since it has been done, now I'm just going to ensure that active follow-up has been done, but that wasn't captured in one of the reports. Some of that stuff tends to happen, sometimes a little bit more removed just because of the risk, if that makes sense.
And if I may, I know some of not some, but most of the time, some of this information is sensitive. But if there is a way, maybe when you do the recommendation follow-up report or the corrective action report, to maybe tap on that or touch on it even high level, just so that the board and the public kind of knows that that is an item that is actively on your agenda, you know, kind of front of mind, and that it's actively being addressed, even if it is kind of not in a public setting.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Thank you. And I wholly concur. It's actually something we've talked about being, as David in a software and IT background and myself, it's something I've been asking her about too. And I agree. Let's figure out a way to make the information enough out there that we can feel comfortable that we're at a good level. So it's a very good point. I don't know if we need to capture that here somewhere, but I know you have it captured, so we will follow up with that. Other member comments?
Just very quickly, I agree with all these audits, makes sense, and go forth and get it done.
I would say is that a motion, but first I actually wanted to say, so I did have one other thing that came up, which, well, actually two things. One is a question for you, Courtney, because I brought this up before, but in the management corrective action plan follow-up, the review that we do in previous years, that was for all audits, not just audits that came out of this team. And it's not clear in there to me, but can we just confirm that, for example, the ITALK audits, we will be collecting that information and including that in that report with respect to the status of the corrective action plans. That was something that the team has been doing from previous years that I find very valuable. And is that correct?
It is correct that we
Okay.
will. I just want to express the difference in the process. So with OIPA's audit recommendations, the team and I will be evaluating whether the recommendations were implemented.
Right.
For all other audits, we would list what management provides us as far as, we'll ensure that it's comprehensive,
Right.
but we will not do any follow-up work. It'll just list the status of.
Yeah, that sounds good. And in the case of where I'm assuming, in those cases, sometimes those auditors may be responsible for following up, and you would touch base and say, have you followed up and close these items out now, correct? Or if that's the case, or you're just doing management?
It would be in reporting out the status.
Yeah.
We should see the internal processes on whether they're closed or not. We will not have another layer on there to go out and actively get the information just because of constraints,
Right.
but we will ensure that you have the most current information and that management is aware that it's being presented to the audit committee and it needs to be accurate.
Awesome. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
The one other thing that came up too is because they did such a good job of it for this meeting, even though it wasn't announced, is I actually was wanting, even though it's a little bit late, to add a new performance measure, which I already told Courtney we wouldn't hold her to this year since it's 7 months into the year. But under transparency and accountability for the Office of the Independent Performance Auditor to make sure that all staff reports are published a week in advance. So any staff reports that they are accountable for, that they get published a week in advance, and that we would measure what percentage of those are actually published a week in advance. So we can, of the audit committee meeting, just as, because I personally feel that's very important for transparency and accountability. And so I think if that's the case, we should be measuring it. I don't know if everyone here seems to agree. I see some head nodding. And so that's great. So, but I already promised her we wouldn't hold her to it this year because I don't think it's fair to look back 7 months, but starting next year, we would do that. So given that, I'd entertain a motion to approve the audit plan, send it forward to the board with that one comment about the performance measure that I just made, being that added in for next year.
Chair, can I get
sorry, yeah.
clarification? Can you define your target? So we'll put that in this performance metrics.
Yeah, I think you should, you came back with, so the target should be something that you should convince us of, like, is 90% reasonable, or let's figure out what a reasonable number is. But that, we would just measure it, but we can come up with a target by the start of the next year of what the percentage is, right? Is that the target
Okay.
you're referring to?
Well, we've just started, we're in the current fiscal year, so that's what I'm thinking. Are you evaluating from July
Oh,
forward?
we would be evaluating from November, December meetings on. Right,
Understand.
December meetings on.
Thank you. Okay,
Yes.
we'll present a target.
Yeah, and you can present a target. Okay. With that,
So moved.
moved by Drucker. Do I have a second?
I second.
Second by Member Dorsey. Please, voting screen, and please vote. That item passes unanimously with Member Wong Nickerson absent. With that, we move on to item number 5, the Office of the Independent Performance Auditor Annual Investigations Report. And Courtney, you take it away.
Thank you, Chair. So today we are presenting the annual investigation report. It is a summary of all activity received by OIPA related to fraud, waste, abuse, and/or gross management. Matters considered for investigation can be initiated by the IPA, myself, requested by the audit committee or the board of directors, or identified by agency staff or stakeholders received in fiscal year 24. Now, if you'll take your attention to the PowerPoint. I'm joined today by Principal Independent Auditor, Whistleblower Hotline Manager, Doug DePete. And we work side by side in the whistleblower hotline and investigation activities of OIPA. I was going to say next slide, but that's me. So the introduction and background we'll go through OIPA initiated investigations. Whistleblower hotline, we'll talk about the purpose, the investigation and referral process, summary of cases and results, and then we'll be open for questions. The Office of the Independent Performance Auditor, OIPA, is the official body of SANDAG. This is per AB 805 to investigate potential fraud, waste, abuse, and gross management. Investigations, as I stated, can be initiated by myself, the Board of Directors, Audit Committee, or complaints filed through the whistleblower hotline. We had one OIPA-initiated investigation so far, and this was initiated by myself, the Audit Committee, Board Chair, board members, in relation to the publicly disclosed allegations around SR 125, toll customer mischarges and accounting issues that warranted an independent investigation. That investigation was released in March. The purpose was to determine if SR 125 finances could be relied upon and determine the steps SANDAG took to rectify known errors with customer accounts. What we found was that ETAN's Fastlane financial reporting cannot be relied upon, and that the financial department lacks adequate internal controls to ensure SR 125 financial information is accurately recorded and reported. The recommendation here was for an independent assessment, which, as I stated in my earlier comments, we're working on right now to issue an RFP to contract someone to perform the independent assessment under my oversight. The other outcomes and other matters that we documented in this report, and you can find this report or you can find this report on OIPA's website, is that ETAN's BOS, that's back office system implementation, was headed for trouble from the beginning, and that SANDAG executive management failed to address the situation in a timely manner, including informing the board of directors. There were 10 recommendations provided to the board and SANDAG executive management, and both the audit committee and the board moved those recommendations forward. This also resulted in a new investigation being launched in relation to the who knew when what investigation, or the Dr. Seuss investigation that we are doing in relation to who knew about the situation with ETAN and issuing, why wasn't the board told earlier, like a year earlier, actually 16 months. So that's what will be coming out in August. So the purpose of the whistleblower hotline, which is a critical aspect of OIPA, is to provide a safe and reliable way for SANDAG employees, contracted parties, and members of the public and other stakeholders to report allegations of fraud, waste, abuse, and gross mismanagement. So when we talk about fraud, waste, abuse, and gross mismanagement, this is really activity by a local agency or an employee that is undertaken in their official duties. It can be deemed to be outside their scope of employment, but it is in violation of local, state, and federal laws and regulations relating to corruption, malfeasance, bribery, theft of government property, fraudulent claims, fraud, coercion, conversion, malicious prosecution, misuse of government property, or willful omission to perform duty, and is economically wasteful or involves gross misconduct. For our referral process, complaints can be submitted via email, phone, or mailed complaint form. You can be anonymous if you wish to, and we can still devise a way to get information back and forth if there's additional information or files or documentation that needs to be shared. Additionally, we want to stress that the information is kept confidential unless there's a need to inform law enforcement. So for every claim that comes in, we go through 5 preliminary analysis questions that we answer. Did it involve SANDAG property, infrastructure, employees, officials, contractors, or does it fall within OIPA's jurisdiction? Does it meet the criteria of fraud, waste, abuse, or gross management? Did it occur within the last year? Was sufficient information provided to initiate an investigation? Do we even have enough details to initiate an investigation? And lastly, is the matter not currently being litigated? We will not get involved in litigation. So the reports that came in, the new cases, we had 6 cases come in this year, and this shows you that between other and misconduct or inappropriate behavior, those were the highest at 33%, and then 17% related to hiring irregularities or misuse of assets or services. Now, when a report comes in, we don't know whether it will be determined to be substantiated, not substantiated, or refuted. That's when we do our work. So this is just the new cases coming in. When we look at the history of OIPA, starting with the initial appointment of the IPA in fiscal year 2020, this shows you the caseload. So right now we are at 6 cases coming in this year. One of our metrics in the annual work plan is to double the caseload for next year. And we do that through making sure that we have successful outreach, so people know the program exists. And that is a way that we can get more tipsters coming in, because that is the greatest way to uncover fraud, waste, and abuse is through tips. We've already done 1 employee outreach briefing, and we will be doing 3 more this year. This tells you that in the number of cases, so for fiscal year 23, we had 8 open cases when we started the year. We received 6 to bring us into 14 in total. However, we closed 12 cases and we have 2 open cases currently. So In those cases that we closed, these are the reasons they were closed. They were closed because they were either not substantiated or refuted or out of jurisdiction. We had 2 complaints that were not substantiated, one that had multiple allegations that was not substantiated, refuted, or out of jurisdiction. 2 complaints were forwarded and closed after preliminary review, determined an outside agency or other SANDAG department should review further. 2 complaints did not qualify as fraud, waste, and abuse. And then we have 1 complaint that we closed after preliminary review, and we determined it wasn't fraud, waste, or abuse. However, we would continue to monitor the SANDAG's work environment for similar work complaints. So as we look ahead, and when I revised the work plan a few months into this calendar year, we talked about that we really wanted to emphasize the hotline program. So we're talking about an enhancement of the whistleblower hotline program that includes educating all SANDAG employees and the governing body on OIPA's whistleblower hotline program, including whistleblower protections and retaliations, because we know that that is critical. People don't want to come forward if they don't feel that they can be protected from retaliation, or if they can be, the information can be kept confidential. We also plan to develop a contractor outreach campaign and then work with contracting to ensure that members of the OIPA team attend bid conferences to make sure that contractors are aware of our existence. And we'll also brainstorm with Kelly on other ideas that we can get that information out to the contracting community. When we talk about detection of deterrence of fraud, waste, and abuse, we know that if we perform investigations timely, that is very important in the deterrence of fraud, waste, and abuse. So we will ensure that we're going to keep performing investigations timely, like SR 125. We started and completed that investigation in 3 months. We'll also prioritize our resources on investigations depending on the potential impact to the organization, stakeholders, and the public. Some investigations may need to fall down lower in the priority level if we have issues that involve the safety of the organization, the financial capacity of the organization. So those will all be determined as we manage our workload given our limited resources. And with that, that concludes the annual investigations report.
Thank you. Great update. I think we'll start with public speakers. Francesca?
Thank you, Chair. Could you confirm how many minutes you'd like for this item?
2 minutes for all the remaining items. Thanks.
Thank you. Our first speaker will be Catherine Rhodes, who will be followed by Consuelo.
Hello, Catherine Rhodes, and I just want to make sure that you got my my letter to you, my 7-page letter to you that I entitled "SANDAG's Ongoing Corruption Due to No Action Taken and Purposeful Lack of Audit Investigation in Dismissing My 19-Year-Old Seismic Concerns Through the Whistleblower Hotline Without Any Backup Documentation, except to incorrectly state my concerns regarding the Rose Canyon Fault Zone are refuted, not substantiated, out of jurisdiction." And so what I'm asking you for my complaint summary number 5, if don't recommend it for approval, actually have my thing to be open pending, because it should be open pending. It shouldn't be closed without even discussing it with me. The audit committee literally did their work without calling me and asking me for anything. I think that's horrible. I think that is corruption. You know, for example, for your airport transit connection, in your report, you said you're going to have 25-foot fault buffer setbacks. The law is 50-foot fault buffer setbacks, and on liquefiable soils, it's 400 feet fault buffer setbacks. And instead of calling me or looking at this, somebody at SANDAG, I don't know who it is, just basically blew it off. How dare you? I've been coming here for so long. I've been giving you guys the benefit of the doubt for decades. And finally, I was going to get something going on. And then you just don't do anything about it. And then this is for, the new CEO is from Caltrans. Caltrans is like the only saving grace, because what they did is they did their memorandum to designer 2010 that forced you guys to actually do some seismic work, at least on the Mid-Coast corridor, when you planned on doing nothing about it. So anyway, I'm very, very disappointed. I can't believe
Thank
this.
you. Your time has expired. Our next speaker will be Consuelo. You can go ahead.
Yeah, before I start my speech, can I go ahead and let Paul speak on my phone after, because he's having issues and he's done his work and he's got a whole bunch to contribute. Would that be okay?
Yes, of course.
After? Okay, cool. Great, Papa. Okay, so this is item 4, correct?
This
Or
is item 5.
Oh, item 5. Paul. Anyway, so yeah, so the whistleblower hotline. Here we go again. Government investigating government. What could possibly go wrong? Economically wasteful. Well, that just sums up SANDAG, doesn't it? And so no litigation for illegal misuse of assets activity. It's just this is a lot, dude. The history of OIPA. You want successful outreach to have the people know that they exist. Okay, so the majority of the people in this county don't even know that SANDAG exists. Okay, so let's just be real on that one. In conclusion, this is all so shady, and there's nothing. Okay, and we have to really be real with ourselves and just really get that nothing and no one will be held accountable. It will be all swept under the government rug, business as usual. So SANDAG needs to shape up or get out of our county, seriously. And that's all I have. And Paul, hold on 1 second.
You were resetting the timer for him.
He's getting his stuff. They're giving you 2 minutes. Okay. So they're on 5. Yes.
Okay, this item makes it clear. Well, this item makes it clear on page 5 that you reject whistleblower cases simply because they are, quote, outside the 1-year time limit, unquote. This is absolutely wrong and could result in hiding more events like the SR 125 fiasco, which happened over a period of 7 years, and retaining incompetent personnel or bad actors who act for years and years. This needs to be revised if you want to restore public trust. Then there is Appendix A, which shows unresolved issues from 2001. We should know specifically what action was taken. Referred to audit is not enough. We should know if there was an actual misuse of assets or there was a quid pro quo, things like that. Is it really fair? It is really fair to no one to leave all of these issues unresolved. Thank you.
Thank you for letting me speak.
Yes, thank you very much for letting me speak.
That concludes the public comments on this item.
Great, thanks. I suppose maybe we could start by having you talk a little bit about a couple of the public comments, one of which is the 1-year time frame. I'm assuming there's a purpose and intent behind that you could help educate the committee about.
Certainly, there is a purpose that the longer you are removed from an incident, the less ability you have to effectively investigate it in relation to information being stale, witnesses not being available. So we are available to receive reports at any time if there is a concern. And so there has to be a timely reporting of matters in order for us to efficiently and effectively investigate them.
Great, thanks. And do you know how that compares with other auditing entities or investigating entities?
I can tell you for the years that I have run, multiple years, that this is what we have maintained.
Okay, thanks. And then again, on the items that are referred to audit, so for example, the first four I see are all related to the bikeways. I'm assuming this is, I'm assuming this is a reasonable way to dig into what's going on here, but maybe you could talk a little bit about that. Because you clearly already identified that auditing the bike early action program is something that is already in the plan. And would you be addressing all of these?
So that's a great question. And so the hotline, and I stated when I went through the annual work plan, is one of the methods that we evaluate, that we're constantly monitoring to see what's coming through on the hotline. Everything that comes through the hotline is not appropriate in relation to an investigation. An investigation means an incident happened, and you have to investigate and determine facts around that situation, determine whether it happened or it did not happen. The mechanism for the hotline can also bring forward broader organizational performance issues. When that occurs, then those are a matter that is referred to audit. The referred to audit really means referred to the audit risk assessment process, because it has to be evaluated further to determine if it warrants a performance audit. And in this case, as you saw, we are going into the administration of the bike program. So those complaints will be a part of our planning and analysis.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks. So for total clarity, it's not, nothing gets done. This is going to be looked into. It's just that's the most efficient and appropriate way to look into it.
Correct.
Okay, thanks. I also just wanted to make a comment. It's great having Doug on as a full-time person here. It's clearly effective because with Mary previously doing this as sort of her weekend activity, clearly we're making a lot more progress now in getting through the backlog. So I appreciate having someone in charge of that. So thanks, Doug, for that. And then last, maybe you could talk a little bit about the comment around item number 5. You know, I don't know how much we can talk in a public forum around the details of that investigation, but just from the perspective of what leads us to refuted versus not substantiated versus not out of jurisdiction, and get us an overview to the point that you're able to on that one.
Absolutely. I'll be happy to talk in broad terms. When we have an complaint or a report filed, we evaluate it to see if the information is there. We say in our procedures, you want to provide as much information as you can, who, when, what, where, provide evidence. We take that information and then we determine if we have enough information to move forward on an investigation. We don't, it is not a process where we work with whistleblowers in an investigation process. We don't. It is just a matter of once we collect the information, then we move forward on forming our independent steps to determine if we refute it, then that means that based on what we saw, it's refuted, it didn't occur. Or we could say it's not substantiated, meaning we don't have enough information to determine whether it is substantiated or not. There isn't enough information, or we've substantiated it and we found that the allegation is true.
Okay, and with respect to the item that's out of jurisdiction, is that something you're allowed to stipulate what that was that's out of jurisdiction, if it would need to be followed up by somebody else?
Correct. We will tell the person if we have communication. Sometimes we don't have communication with the person making the complaint. If we do have communication channels open with them, then we will inform them this is out of jurisdiction and this is where you should seek, you should submit your complaints in this avenue. It's not ours.
Okay, but in this particular instance, it's not appropriate to say what the out of jurisdiction portion was. For
we'll,
that investigation, because I don't know what it is clearly. wasn't
yes,
part
I
of the
understand,
investigation.
but no, we're happy to have that conversation further with the reporter.
Okay. Okay, thanks. Maybe more to get into there, but I'll let the other committee members jump in now. Ms. Pigney Forrest.
I wanted to sort of circle back as it relates to the questions for the preliminary analysis regarding did it occur within the 1 year period? Because I did have the same concern as the public comment. So I just want to clarify that even if an incident happened and it wasn't within the last year, that complaint would still be taken seriously and looked at accordingly and triaged accordingly. And I ask because I've had a case as a fraud investigator where there was essentially a return employee and the complainant was mentioning items or issues that had happened years prior that were not reported. So it wasn't within the year's period, but the employee was a return employee and there were concerns that the employee would do the same thing that they did prior to them leaving. And those indiscretions were not within the year. So I just want to just kind of clarify, for myself and for the public that, a complaint should still be able to come in even and be taken seriously and investigated accordingly, even if it did not happen within the year's period. And completely take your point about, stale evidence and wanting to make sure that the evidence is there. But sometimes these cases aren't that clean. And you want to sort of build the public's trust that regardless of when they decide to report an issue, that it's going to be taken seriously on its face.
I understand, Member Pickney Forrest, your concern. And in a case such as that, we would evaluate if we think that the practices were still continuing. Are they current practices? Is there enough information there that goes into that preliminary? Do we have enough information to believe the practices are still are still occurring within that time frame? So I do think it is at times could be more nuanced. And I think that the limits of a year is also in relation to resources of what we can effectively investigate as well, that where investigations become more resource driven, the longer the time period goes back as well.
So is it fair to sort of sum up, for my purposes, public concern that, the 1 year is not a non-negotiable for an investigation happening? Those other questions, even if it did come in, an issue did come in and it was after a year, those other questions would be determinative as to whether or not, the office would investigate the case. So essentially, it's a holistic and comprehensive analysis, and the 1 year is not the thing that will take the investigation off the table, because I think that's probably the underlying concern, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. I think I just want to stress that we would have to have enough information to believe the practices were still consistent, still occurring in order for us to initiate.
Okay, thanks. Any other member comments? David.
Great, thank you for the report. What I want to understand is what type of feedback is given to the complainant?
The complainant is, so I also want to acknowledge this is a new system, okay? And when I say a new system, it doesn't mean that the prior IPA did not have a hotline where she operated, but in relation to the system and the processes that we're putting together. So as we get our systems up right today, like if a report came through, the report should be acknowledged by the reporter. We've received your report. That if there's additional information that you would like to provide, you can provide that. we will not update you as to the status of this report. The next communication that reporter, if that reporter chooses to be in communication with us, would be that we have closed your report. Your report is closed. So the reporters will watch to see like the annual report. If they're uncertain whether the status of theirs, they will look. That's why we provide the details in the annual report so individuals can see. If it is a significant investigation, it results in a full investigation report.
So if a person makes a complaint, it goes into the system and there's no more communication back from the office to that complaint. So what I'm wondering is whether or not you may be entering a place where people make complaint, have the feeling that they make complaints, and they're consistently thrown out. And how do you know, because almost every complaint on this has been either unsubstantiated or refuted or whatever. So I'm wondering if it would make sense at some point to be able to communicate that back so that people do not think that they're complaining and just it goes into the bit bucket, shall we say. It doesn't go into the bit bucket per se, but it seems to be going into a place where it doesn't create it creates an investigation that is unsubstantiated almost.
And I hear you, Vice Chair. I think that we are in a position where if we reported back, and we could report that your case has been closed and it's been unsubstantiated. However, we would not provide them further information in relation to why it was unsubstantiated. It is not a collaborative process in relation to informing because of confidentiality and processes around the investigation.
Yeah, thanks. And just for clarity, based upon our earlier conversation, I would stipulate that, I mean, at least half these items are not actually refuted or not substantiated. Many of them have been referred to audit, which isn't actually an action that's going to be a further investigation, right? I guess as I was doing this totally, and one thing I was a little confused about is item number 11 says not substantiated, but then action taken is recommended corrective action, which I had not caught earlier until I was detailing this list. What would that mean?
So in that case, I believe a recommendation was made to management, and this is an earlier case.
Mm-hmm.
So while it was not substantiated, a recommendation maybe of how to do things better to prevent that appearance from happening was probably provided. Okay,
so no identified fraud, waste, or abuse, but perhaps a better practice to be implemented. So yeah, I mean, given those, it looks like 7 or 8 out of the 12 actually have actions that are being done. So I think it's clear to the process is being taken seriously, and we're finding real things that need to be looked into here. To David's point, though, the question is, how can we do well about making sure that the public feels like they're being heard if they never get any feedback? And it is kind of a tricky problem. I even know, for example, in my city, if somebody files a code complaint issue, they don't necessarily ever hear back about it, right? It's just, we go look at it. If there's a code issue, we fix it. If there wasn't, we ignore it. And then the complainant never hears back. So it's not an uncommon process in the public space, but I think it's one that we need to be cognizant of to make sure that people feel like they are being heard.
Absolutely. And I just want to speak, I mean, that is why we do the complaint summary, the matrix of providing at least that level of insight in the accountability of what's coming in, what's closing, and that it's all accounted for.
Okay. And then with respect to the item, the 5th item, one that we were talking about before, I understand, I think you're going to follow up with that particular complaint and have a more detailed conversation. So if something comes out of that, we could have a new item submitted as a complaint by that individual that would get investigated, right?
Yeah, and so
Okay.
typically in these cases, so the response back to a reporter would, if a reporter's not satisfied with the process, it would be that we followed, the process. We have completed the process. However, if there is information, if you'd like to submit a new complaint, you can do that. You can submit a new complaint, but it would be a new complaint, not the items that
Right.
we've previously investigated.
Okay. Thanks. So yeah, Ms. Pickney Forrest.
Just a follow-up. If it was mentioned before, I don't remember, so apologies, but how often are the investigative reports summaries done? Is it annually?
Yes.
Okay, so then part of, the discussion regarding, being transparent with the public in terms of the status of an investigation, or sort of knowing that their investigation didn't go into a black hole. A quarterly report would be cumbersome. I do understand that. So maybe the consideration, not necessarily right now, but the consideration could be, kind of doing 2 reports, a 6-month and a 12-month overall summary of the reports that came in, topical, thematic. You don't have to necessarily go into details, but people would be able to see the progress of the report without having to necessarily wait the entire year to get an update. So that's certainly something to consider.
So I am curious if, when I stated, so the reporter would be notified if we have contact information that your report has been closed. We can add to that saying that your report has been closed because it's been substantiated, unsubstantiated, that we can put the categories in there. So at least the reporter knows that. I don't know if that's going to fully satisfy what you are looking forward. We had talked about, I think when we did the annual work plan with the greater focus on the whistleblower program, we had discussed moving this to an annual report and then doing an operational update mid-year.
Right.
So we certainly could
And that's what I was going to
provide.
bring up, is and that isn't captured here, but we did decide upon that because it went from quarterly to annual, and I was a little nervous about that, as the rest of the committee was. So how do you feel like trying an operational update mid-year and on this, and then seeing if that meets the needs? If not, we can ask for a report at that time.
That's completely fine, because I think there's 2 levels, just, being clear that I think there's 2 levels of notification that need to occur. So there's sort of the notification to the public at large of the number of reports coming in. We're being transparent about what we're investigating. This is the status of these investigations. No, in general, not no, but your reports are being taken seriously. Here's how we're doing it. Then there's the second set of notification to the actual reporter, where they are notified, 1, okay, we did receive your report. So that's that initial, they report, you send an email back, we did receive it. And then later, or if the reporter chooses to, they can remain in contact with you. If they do not choose to remain in contact with you, then the last notification is, this is the status of your case. It's closed, it's been substantiated, or it's closed, it's been unsubstantiated, or it's closed with corrective action to the department. So I'm just wanting to, I'm not being prescriptive about how to do it, but I'm just wanting to make sure that the 2 levels of communication are addressed. So to the reporter directly, and then the communication to the public at large about the whistleblower program and how it's being managed, especially since, OIPA is at a point where you're trying to gain trust from the public in regards to reporting, improper incidences through the hotline. So that's my main concern. How we get there, totally up for discussion, not overly prescriptive there.
And I just want to add, because our shop, like many other shops, are desiring a peer review investigative process as well. So that has been talked about with chief audit executives for several years, of having the same peer review process that we go through with the audits, having a similar process done with the investigations. So I am in full support of that. And I think that would be another layer when we talk about trust of individuals knowing the process has been fully evaluated independently.
Any other comments? Anybody interested in making a motion?
I'll move that we recommend this report to the Board of Directors.
And do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Druger, second by Dorsey. Please vote. That motion passes unanimously with member Wong Nickerson absent. With that, we now move on to item number 6, which has two parts, 6A and 6B, but we'll just go through both of them up front and then go to public comment and then go to discussion on that. So we'll start with 6A, which is the performance audit of SANDAG's contracts, invoicing, and payments, and that's Courtney.
Great. Thank you, Chair. So this audit was part of our annual work plan. It is the contracting invoice and payment process audit. I am very pleased to be joined by almost my entire team today. As you'll see on the slide, participated in this myself, Lloyd Carter, the Deputy Independent Performance Auditor, Crystal Crescenza, Chris Delgado, and Michael Ryan as Associate Independent Auditors. We looked at numerous contracts in here, and so that's why several auditors had individual contracts that they were looking at. So what we're going to go through is the introduction and background. Finding 1, invoices paid with insufficient supporting documentation. Finding 2, invoiced rates versus approved rates. Finding 3, missing records. Finding 4, missing approval signatures. And last, we'll talk about prior audit recommendations from contracting audits 1 and 2. So the performance audit of the contracts, invoice, and payment process is from the period July 1st, 2019 to June 30th, 2023. As I stated before, it is a part of the board-approved, audit committee-approved annual audit plan. The contractor invoicing and payments considered high risk because of the findings that were revealed in OIPA's operational process and system control review, contracts and procurement audits, part 1 and part 2. Our objective was to determine whether SANDAG's review and approval of controls are effective over the contract invoice and payment process. We selected 5 contractors that were previously identified in the OIPA's operational process and system control review, contracts and procurements audit part 1 that was issued in October 14th, 2022. These are the contractors that were selected. They were selected because there was the highest dollar increase in contract value when we compared to the original contract award amount, which this slide shows you. The 5 contractors are WSP, PGH Wong, HNTB, JPM, and AECOM, ACOM. You'll see the percentage change on the right side. So we know that SANDAG must ensure public funds are properly spent for the intended purpose. They do this by using internal policies and procedures in administering the process of invoicing and payments. They also must adhere to all applicable federal and state laws, as well as the rules and regulations imposed by the various funding agencies. SANDAG must also appropriately manage projects to ensure that budgets and timelines are adhered to. Public funds are spent appropriately in accordance with contract terms, and that invoices are reviewed to verify completion of work prior to payment. We looked at 1,697 total invoices. That totaled $92 million that we paid to these 5 contractors during the audit period. I do want to point out that HNTB included a 4-year time period where the rest of the contractors were over a 2-year period. So while you see the total paid amount there is larger for HNTB, it does correlate to the fact that there was a larger time period we reviewed their invoices. We took a random audit sample of 423 of those transactions totaling $34 million. And you can see that on the chart as far as how it applies to each contractor. SANDAG project managers are responsible for important components of the contract invoice payment process. They're responsible to review invoices for fraudulent charges, timeliness and accuracy, allowable cost, consistency with contract terms, and acceptability of contractors' work. They are to confirm invoices adhere to contract requirements and approve and sign. They submit invoices to their managers or directors for approval before submitting to finance for final review. When it comes into finance, they then complete several levels of review at review of the request and the documents submitted prior to entering the request into the accounting system for payment. The audit identified 4 issues during the review of the contractor's invoices, and those are listed across the top. We identified insufficient supporting documentation, invoiced rates versus approved rates, missing records, and missing approval signature. And when I say invoice rates versus approved rates, so the rates were different on the invoices versus what was authorized. You'll see down at the bottom, the percentage of based on how many invoices we looked at. So for the insufficient supporting documentation, 32% of the issues were related to that. 3.31% was for the invoice rates versus the approved rates, 1.42% for missing records, and 0.95%. And again, that's across our sample, and our sample was approximately 423. There we go. So the first one, which is the most significant, is that 137 of the 423 reviewed invoice transactions, 32%, totaling 13 million, did not include sufficient documentation to determine what work was completed. So the documentation outlining what work was performed was not provided. This includes missing time cards or incomplete work, missing documentation of subcontractor work, a lack of progress reports. Sometimes progress reports weren't included. Sometimes they were required and not completed and not included. There was not enough information to determine if the work had been performed. Project managers were not consistent in requesting itemized or detailed summary of work performed from contractors to include with invoices, and the SANDAG's service agreement language regarding invoice requirements was inconsistent. So we have adequate supporting documentation was not always included with the contractor invoice submitted to finance. We have 2 recommendations. In this area, we recommend that Contracts and Procurement Department provide annual training. And we really can say, when we talk about annual training, what we want to make is that there is training, adequate training to ensure that project managers are trained in what is required for invoices based on the updated standard services agreement and task order requirement. Training should ensure project managers validate the work has been performed and meet contractual requirements before invoices are submitted for payments. So we need to ensure that our people know exactly what is needed in the invoice, and that their work demonstrates that. The recommendation number 2 is we recommend that Finance Department updates all their accounts payable procedures to include requiring supporting documentation consistent with the standard service agreement and task orders submitted for invoice processing. Finding 2 was that the invoice rates did not match the approved rates. We found this in 3.31% of the cases we looked at, so 14 of the 423 invoices. The project managers did not exercise due diligence when reviewing the invoices against the most current fee schedules or master rate tables for the contracts in question. And the Contract and Procurement Department did not have procedures dictating where and how fee schedule approvals and changes should be managed and centrally located to ensure consistent, up-to-date record keeping. So the contractor's invoice rates did not always match the approved rate, fee, or schedule. The recommendation here is that we recommend Contracts and Procurement Department create a procedure to manage, track, and store rate and fee schedule approvals and changes in one file location to ensure accurate verification of invoiced amounts. So we really saw the inability to put the hands on the final and approved contract rates was an issue. So that's why we're recommending making sure everything's organized. It's in one location. We did have greater success when it was the master rate table, because that is kept in like an Excel spreadsheet. So it is managed as it changes, where when you're talking about the invoiced rates that are not the approved fee schedule, that can get amended and it doesn't necessarily get updated and put into a central location. So we just want to point out that the master table rates, we did not see the issues with as we did with the other individual rate process on the amendments. We recommend that for recommendation 4, that we recommend the contract and procurement department provide fee schedule training annually to procurement staff and project managers to ensure fee schedules align with contract needs and project managers can efficiently verify and track invoices. Finding 3 was missing records. So in 6 of the 423 invoices that we looked at, they were not in compliance with finance's invoice record keeping requirements. In all cases identified in this finding, the proof of completed batch review or proof of payment was not documented, and that was a procedure that finance had and that finance staff didn't exercise due diligence. So the recommendation here is that finance department remind staff to follow their own financial department procedures. We know that that process is no longer relevant with ERP. And so that's why this recommendation is just to ensure that your staff is following your procedures and that you are adequately following up on to ensure that they are. Missing approval and signatures. So 4 of the 423 reviewed invoices totaling $115,000 did not comply with the invoice review and approval or submission requirements. So in this case, you have specifically where if you're the project manager, you need to sign off on it. In addition, the director would need to sign off on it. So we saw that finance staff didn't always exercise due diligence and reject invoices that did not include the 2 signatures. And we are making a recommendation that finance personnel and project managers, again, receive the training to understand what the requirements are and then to follow through on those requirements. And then to make sure that there are no cases where that you get 2 signatures. So for example, if a project manager is also a director, then the director would have to go above to the next level. So in this case, if you had the project manager was the director, then they would have to go into executive management and have it signed off on. So you have 2 different signatories. ERP will assist in all this process as well because they'll be required to move forward and get appropriate sign off. Which brings me to the emphasis here. Many of these recommendations parallel what we've previously seen in the contracts and procurement operational and system control audit part 1 and part 2. We know that there needs to be a creation of SOPs to provide instructions on entering and processing those invoices, to include all necessary supporting documentation, the verification of the work performed. We must be signing off and knowing that the work has been completed. The documentation attached to the invoice has to include the detailed itemization to again confirm that. And we have to have regular training. Our people have to know what they're looking for in order to be able to sign off that this transaction has truly occurred. That is the purpose of the internal control. If you sign off on it, but you do not have appropriate documentation or awareness of completion, then it is a failed internal control. As far as management's action taken on following the audit's completion, in May at this audit committee, management came forth and they did present their corrective action plan for the contracts and procurement operational and systems control audit. Why we bring that up again is because many of the recommendations that we're talking about here parallel. So we know that as management moves forward on implementing those recommendations, we anticipate these issues to be addressed as well. We also know that when management was here, and they're going to give their presentation next, that they did state that several of the audit recommendations were completed and implemented in relation, and one of them being because the new enterprise resource planning system has been put in place. We will be conducting our annual recommendation follow-up process in the summer. So we will be going in and verifying, confirming, right, whether management has implemented these, and then we'll provide that information to you in September. We also want to note that the templates we talk about in the report, that the templates were inconsistent in what they were requiring as far as supporting documentation. We did go in and look at that specifically, and we have confirmed that management has updated that. So the template is accurate and it does provide, it does notify that appropriate documentation is required. And with that, we are happy to take questions.
Great. We'll hold off on the questions and go to the management response, and then we'll go from there. Thanks. And I guess this is Kelly McHale and Kimberly Dremel. Great.
Kelly and I did not coordinate our wardrobe today.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Kelly McHale, the Director of Contracts and Procurement Services, and I am presenting today along with Kimberly Trammell, the Director of Finance and Accounting. Before we walk through the action plan, we would like to stress 3 critical points from our management response. Number 1, management accepts the findings. Number 2, many of the recommendations align with the work in progress on the Contracts Audit Action Plan, so most of it is underway. Lastly, we look forward to continuing to work with OIPA to improve processes and practices to ensure that funds are properly spent for the intended public purposes. So in your package, you will find proposed action plan from management outlining 7 total recommendations and the actions we intend to take. On the slide before you is finding 1, and I'm happy to report that the work outlined in both proposed actions is well underway based on the recommendations in the Contracts Audit Action Plan. Boilerplate contract templates, as Courtney referred to, have already been updated to require our consultants to submit detailed invoices with adequate supporting documentation. And as mentioned when I was here in May, work is already in progress to implement a robust support infrastructure to assist project managers with effective contract administration activities. And we refer to that in the slide as the Contract Management Support Unit. Training materials and procedures are currently in development, and it is expected that annual training on invoice processing will commence this September. Project managers will be trained on what consultants are contractually required to submit to support invoices, how to review that documentation, how to confirm deliverables or milestones were met before approving an invoice for payment. And we are also developing tools that will help them. A checklist, a consistent checklist agency-wide that will guide the PM in this task, as well as deliverable trackers and things of that nature. Additionally, as part of recommendation number 2, Kim and I plan to work together to ensure that accounts payable procedures are in line with the invoice and supporting documentation requirements in our agreements and task order templates. For finding 2, there are 2 proposed actions as well. And again, the work to satisfy these 2 items is already underway. Senior leadership within the contracts and procurement team are currently working on centralizing the rate and fee schedules in a single location on SharePoint site and developing procedures that our project managers can use when they're trying to verify that the rates match the current schedules. And training on how to find the rate and fee schedules and how to utilize them will be provided to project managers beginning in December.
As Courtney mentioned, for finding number 3, the missing records, our new ERP system implementation will address some of these. It will keep the proof of payment and batch reviews within that system. So we've focused the response to this finding on a regular cadence of reviewing and updating the procedures around this process. And that right now we're already going through and looking at a lot of those procedures to see if they need to be updated to reflect the new system. So once we've done that kind of overhaul, we'll then have a regular review of those procedures. And finding number 4 has 2 responses. As was mentioned during the discussion of this, there's a number of parties involved across SANDAG, multiple departments. And so the nature of this response is really to make sure that everybody involved understands the responsibilities and the requirements. So it is to implement procedures that clarify what needs to be submitted and what approvals are required. This has also changed with our new ERP system. There's an electronic workflow that's part of the ERP system. So it has to go through those steps now. So really what we're going to focus on is making sure that everybody's aware of what approvals are appropriate and the outline of the PM, if the director is acting as PM, having that in the procedures. This concludes the update, and more details can be found in the actual report, and we're happy to answer any questions.
I want to add a couple comments. Clearly, the problem is that this agency has weak project management tools. And it's an area that we need to improve. And we're cognizant about that. We accepted the recommendations. Contracts is doing their due diligence. Finance will be doing their due diligence. But we will be reorganizing the agency to consolidate where project managers are, who project managers actually do, because I think we use loosely the word project manager in the agency. And that would allow us to also create a project management decision that will create those checks and balances also on best practices the Project Management Institute has. So we take it very seriously. We appreciate OIPA's diving into the analysis and all their different studies. Their results are going to just make this agency be better. And we really appreciate the efforts and the partnership. And I just wanted to conclude in that with the team's efforts.
Thanks for that, Mario. Why don't we go to public speakers first? Francesca?
Thank you, Chair. Our first speaker will be Consuelo, who will be followed by Paul Henkin.
Okay, I am, I'm just chiming in, listening to all this, and wanted to kind of piggyback on Mario's, what he just stated about the agency being weak. It is, everything's weak. Everything. That's all I got. So.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Paul Henkin. Paul, you can go ahead when you're ready. Paul, unfortunately, oh, I just see you unmuted.
Okay, let's see. Okay, this audit looks like kind of like a repeat of the 2022 and the prior audit. I'm surprised at the number of missing document signatures and incorrect payment rates after the previous audit. And AT&T at $48 million of payments, over half of the total. They looked out with their sample size of about 10%. The biggest issue that I have is there's no clear indication of which problem invoices were for the period after the October 2022 audit. From what I see in Appendix A, there is improvement, but it would be helpful to have it quantified. Now, management's response looks okay to me, and from what Mario said, our new CEO has everything kind of under control. So I'm hoping for the best. My question is, what incentive is there to follow the recommendations of the audit team? But again, Mario Orso seems to have it under control. So I'm hoping for this. Yeah, right. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Truth. You can go ahead.
Hey there, thank you. What I translated the official response to from your experts, we accept that SANDAG is a corrupt agency. And Mario's response, weak tools. How about that's a weak response? Is that the best that can be offered when using money that's not yours? And that no regular person in the county who provided that money got a say in how it was negligently spent. The 60 seconds, certainly, from a handful of people doesn't count as consent of the governed. I can tell you that right now. You guys actually should really be ashamed. You should be going on TV, just like they do in Japan, getting on your hands and knees and begging forgiveness for what's been done with our money and apologizing and making sure it never happens again. Not saying, oh, we got it under control, it's all good. That's fake. And all these decades, how much longer do you think people are going to accept this or believe you or treat you with respect? It's not going to happen. So let's be real. A mop of new leadership must come in to truly fix the issues here. Doesn't sound like Mario is it. It hasn't looked like he's it from what I witnessed so far. However, feel free to prove me wrong at some point. You have time to do it. Although this agency doesn't have time because it's a sinking ship. And that ship with a P, I understand if there's confusion on that, it's very easy with the history because we're going to do better in the future doesn't hold water. Because SANDAG is a very extensive and corrupt and psychotic history that I actually just covered in a video recently, just a little smidgen of that history of hiding documents, more missing records for money that's spent. Absolutely unacceptable. I was just listening in and I just couldn't believe what I was hearing. And also I heard today that only dorks ride bikes. What do you think, Zito? See you tomorrow, people. Thank you.
That concludes the public comments on this item.
Thank you. We can move to member comments and questions at this point in time. I think I'll start with one quick one for clarity since I was confused about this. And it was mentioned by a public commenter as well, which was the period of review for this latest audit. My understanding is that the period of review for this latest audit was the same period that was used in the original contracts audit. So we weren't exploring newer contracts and newer invoices since that time frame that might have been implemented with management changes. Is that correct?
The period for this audit is July 1st, 2019 to June 30th, 2023. So the end time period on this is a little further than what the previous contracts audit was, but to take us back to the recommendation follow-up process, contract 1 and contract 2 were issued, and then there was a response to the recommendations. So why you're seeing the parallel recommendations and parallel findings here is that the implementation of the recommendations had not occurred.
Right. I won't necessarily, that's certainly a reason. One would hope that it wouldn't be the same if the period were a year later, but we don't know that. And that's what we'll be exploring in the upcoming year to some degree.
Yes, I think we're just talking a couple months that it was extended out and that
Yeah, because if I recall, contract
wasn't
1 was like
change.
in April, and to go from April to June, there's not enough time to implement recommendations in that time frame. So
Correct.
it's not surprising from that regards. Okay, I just wanted to be clear on that time frame before we start discussion. So other committee members, do you have questions of either the WIPA's office or management or comments? Yes, Ms. Pigney Forrest.
I guess at this point I have more of a comment because I think my questions have been answered, but you guys can clarify where necessary. So first I wanted to say to the department and management, thank you for acknowledging the recommendations in the report and implementing them post haste. That does not always occur. So I just wanted to sort of give that bit of acknowledgement. Secondly, while I was listening to the presentation, I had some concerns regarding the insufficient supporting documentation, the level or the amount of documentation that was insufficient. And so my question was going to be, Was there going to be some level of spot checking in the interim as the policies and procedures and the trainings were being developed? Because this is something that while those items are being developed, this is something that needed to be sort of reined in immediately. So what I think I heard from you, Courtney, is that as a part of the recommendation follow-up process, you're going to do some level of spot testing to sort of follow up on this. And then the second concern that I had was, who was checking the work of the project managers in order to sort of catch the documentation not being present. And so, Mario, what I think I heard from you is that there is some consideration within the organization to possibly look at reorganizing and shifting the project managers organizationally so that there is better checks and balances, so that there is a proper level of supervision regarding their work. So if those two things are correct, then I think the issues or concerns that I had are being addressed.
It's not just that they're being checked, but that there's consistency. Without having dived in and with all the project managers, normal practice is having in a big agency that delivers infrastructure projects, it's having that program project management group that basically creates that consistency and that training with all the project managers in partnership with contracts, in partnership with finance. So it's more than just housing them all in under one umbrella, but it's to create that consistency of the processes. And therefore, knowing everybody being aware of what's required, and also that peer support. When somebody is new, they can reach out to their partners or within the same area, project managers. There is a slur of brand new staff in the agency that requires that training and consistency and peer review from across the aisles, but having them under one kind of management system or coordination system will hopefully assist in this. So I hope this expands a little bit in the understanding. You're correct how you framed it. The team is giving what the reactions that we're going to be doing, but we're going to take it even an extra step of what the team is reporting. It will take some time. I do have to acknowledge that those changes don't occur overnight.
Thanks, Mario. And I will acknowledge that in earlier discussions that our vice chair had recommended that we form a project management office, and glad to see that we're getting that done now, because that was something that he and I both have a lot of experience with and know about the recommendations. Before we move on, I did want to make sure Courtney, you have a chance to address her question about how these audits are followed up on, and we'll be doing spot checking and that kind of stuff.
Thank you. What you stated is correct. We will be doing spot testing. We may even expand it more. We're going to have to look at that to see if the implementation is occurring accurately, but there will be testing for sure on their practices.
And David?
Yeah, so first question is, do you know if these insufficient reporting documents, invoice raised, missing records and missing approvals, is that cumulative, or were there some invoices that had all four problems? Probably didn't look at that.
Yeah, well, I am going to look to the team and to answer that. Mike, you want to grab that one?
Yeah, I can grab that one. For the vast majority of them, it was just okay, they just had one issue, but there were a few. I don't have the number off the top of my head right now that had multiple issues.
Yeah, I kind of figured that. I just wanted to make sure that my assumption was right. I realize that the management action is to have in place something about the insufficient supporting documentation done by September. It would seem that that is with 1/3 of the invoices. And that's obviously a sample. And we don't know if that's probably a pretty good sample, that there should be something happening immediately to ensure that all supporting because that's a huge problem. Having run an IT department, having run projects, it's one of the things that always want to make sure that there's all that documentation before they're presented to the finance department. So it would seem that something should be put in place almost immediately to ensure that that documentation is there.
I did mention during the presentation that our contract templates have already been updated and our task order templates. So that's the requirement of our consultants to submit that supporting documentation. So I'm hoping that that has sort of taken effect already. And now we're going to train the project managers, but I'm hoping the consultant community has already gotten word that they should be submitting, and it's a contractual requirement now.
Great. So, I appreciate all the work you've done on this and look forward to making sure that in the future, at least the supporting documentation is down to very little. The rest of them are quite actually small, but the missing approval signature should be 0.
Other comments or questions? Seeing nobody up right now. I had a couple of things I wanted to touch on, one of which was just on the recommendations. I had already had a conversation with Courtney about this, and she sort of touched it already, which is the comment about annual training, and just make sure that we're kind of loose about the concept of annual training, that the important thing is people get trained. And I would say having onboarding training, people new to the role, having required training when a policy changes, that kind of stuff is more important than actual annual training, but making sure that we have policies in place that are ensuring people in the role are trained. And that I think is that your recommendation meets the spirit. I just want to make sure that there's some flexibility there on how it gets implemented so that it actually meets that overall objective. The other question I had was around what was originally recommendation 7. I think on the management slides, it's now finding for recommendation 2, but which is the 2 signature ones. I mean, it sounds like we're already moving into the ERP system. Has the ERP system been implemented to require 2 levels of approval? Is that the case? And so the only thing that needs to happen is the policy needs to be updated, but it's already actually implemented this way. So it can't move through the system unless you have 2 levels of approval.
The system requires 2 levels of approval at the department level.
Okay.
And then it goes into finance. So yes, it has to go through those 2 levels of approval.
Okay, that's great. And so that is David's point. I mean, that's the way an ERP system should work. If it's implemented correctly, it just won't move on until a 2nd level of approval happens. And so that recommendation is largely just getting our documentation and policies updated to reflect our implementation then.
Correct.
Okay, thanks. With that, I think those were my questions as well. Any other comments? Otherwise, this is just a discussion item. I see nothing else. So thank you to the team. Thank you to management. I will make one other comment just about the topic in general, which is, Mario has acknowledged it. I think that, we hear a lot of comments about fraud and concern in that space. And we clearly have had real challenges with process control and process implementation, and that's what the audits have been exposing. Fortunately, we have not encountered cases of fraud at this point. I mean, there's still investigations ongoing, but I think it's important for the public to know that the challenge that we have is that the systems that have been in place make it easy for fraud to occur or easy to miss fraud, but we've been doing a lot of looking, and I think it's important to note that, I believe that we by and large have really good staff that wants to do the right thing, that just hasn't had the right tools or processes in place, and that's what we're here to fix right now. So I just think it's important to note that. With that, let's conclude this meeting. We're going to move on to the adjournment. I did want to make a note that we're dark in August. So our next meeting is scheduled at Friday, September 6th, 2024, Friday, September 6th, 2024 at 9 a.m., our usual time. Amazingly enough, I want to give a heads up that at that point in time, it's actually time to start the annual performance review process for our independent performance auditor, because that gets started, which is hard to believe, which will give more outlines of what that looks like at that meeting. But one of the things that we do is select a subcommittee to work on that. I am going to volunteer myself since I'm been here for quite a while and we have a new performance auditor, but I'll be looking for one other volunteer from the audit committee to work on that subcommittee. And it will be collecting, doing survey related information, doing, coming up with a recommendation for compensation and that kind of stuff that we would bring back to the audit committee and finalize in the November. So it's basically a 2-month process, a 2-meeting process that will start in September. So I'll be looking for another volunteer and hopefully approval of my volunteerism as well at that time frame. With that, everybody have a great rest of your summer and we're adjourned. Thank you.